Before we get started, I'd like to make some things clear about this video. This video is purely conjecture. It is my personal opinion as to where I believe some of the story and perhaps the lore of Destiny 2 to be heading in the next 5 to 6 weeks. I have listened, I have watched, I have heard, and I've based my own opinions as to where I think the direction of Destiny is going to. So the 3 areas that I would like to look at are 1, the history of Destiny 2. Number 2, the darkness. And number 3, seasons. Now, as most of you are well aware, it's clear that Bungie have had a history of changes. There have been lots of great beginnings, lots of somewhat great middles, and then some endings that just either go out with a bang or they sort of lack the strength that we're all looking for. That universe, that narrative story that we all desperately want to be drawn into deeper, to understand or to coexist in a world that otherwise doesn't exist right now in our everyday, but that we all secretly hope and dream of in a fantastical fantasy sort of setting. So what's clear about Destinies, or Destiny 1 and 2 history-wise, is that there are a lot of loose ends that haven't been tied up. And what's interesting about a lot of the concepts, whether that be Crota or Oryx, or whether that be the Fallen, or whether that be the Vex or the Cabal, what I find interesting about all of these stories is the way they conclude in the middle, and how we're left with so many loose ends and no full conclusions. I say this because I draw a lot of parallel between the world of Destiny and obviously Star Wars. There's no way without a doubt that Destiny has not borrowed from many of the copious amounts of space, odyssey, fantasy, you name it. It probably has a little bit of influence from those things. There's just no way. There's no way Destiny could exist without Star Wars. If there was no Star Wars, there would cease to be any Destiny, never mind a Destiny 2. But what I've realized from watching a lot of other people's YouTube videos, and it's clear to me that a lot of people are upset with the way the shift from Destiny 1 went into Destiny 2. Now that's because they're both technically 2 completely different IPs. Yes, they bear the same name and have a lot of all the same context, but in terms of a publisher point of view, they are 2 brand new titles. Never mind the fact that half of the team that ran the original Destiny, or ran the original Bungie, if you want to put it that way, most of those core people no longer work for that company. Now that's neither here nor there, and I'm sure if Bungie were listening to this, they'd say to me, actually, there's like a good large percentage of employees who worked for Bungie and have been working for Bungie for years, and that's fantastic, that's great. I'm not taking shots at Bungie as a company because I love the Destiny franchise. I remember when it first released on PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, and the biggest complaint I had is, why isn't this game coming to PC? Now Bungie promised us that eventually it might come to PC, and there were so many rumours around that for a long time, and then it never happened. And then we got Destiny 2, and then we got it on PC. So, second thing I want to address is the darkness. I watched a video on this, and I kind of want to talk about the darkness bracket Destiny 3. Now there are so many rumours flying around as to how this is going to segue. Now from a publisher standpoint, Destiny 2 is already a very old game. There are 2 ways that you can look at Destiny 2. Destiny 2 will either follow a World of Warcraft sort of pattern, which, judging from the way that things have gone, it seems to be that that's what they're going for. This game that lives on for generations and continues to evolve, whereas WoW doesn't. WoW hasn't had like a graphical overhaul since God knows when, and even then it's usually just a pixel touch up here and a pixel touch up there. They haven't completely reinvented perhaps character models, and the overall way you experience that game is fundamentally the same. Combat, the same. 3D animations, the same. They don't push it any further than they need to, other than the cinematics, which is one of the weirdest things ever, because you're advertising a game through a cinematic, and then when you get into it, it's nothing at all like what you've seen in the trailer. The gameplay is nothing at all like that. It's very basic, very simple, and that's perhaps why many people enjoy watching it. Now, Destiny 2, of course, is a little bit different, because they were previously owned by Activision, and now they don't own Activision. So whatever the next major season is for them, this being The Darkness, of course, or Destiny 3, is actually huge. This is going to be the first self-published content that they push out without anybody breathing over their shoulders, obviously other than themselves and their executives. Because as far as I'm aware, they have one person on their executive team. And then they've got all their shareholders, which is all where all the other pressure comes from, because nothing's ever simple when you seek to launch a game. There's a lot of business that goes into it. So, like I said, Destiny 2 is going to predominantly be... It's an old game. It is an old game. It has been around for 2 years. Now, most games that have been around for maybe 2.5 years tend to sort of tail out towards the end or phase out, unless it's a franchise that's that big. It's got a large enough scope and trajectory to keep pushing forward. Now, here are some of my thoughts around Destiny 3, along with what Destiny have told us. There are several rumours going around that Destiny 3 is not going to be a separate game, but more that it's going to be added on content into the current Destiny 2 that we know. Here's the biggest problem with that. The Bungie team themselves have said how much capacity they have in their servers currently to keep running Destiny the way it's running right now. That being said, that they're constantly adding layers on content on top of layers of content, and the game itself is huge. It is 60 gigs. That's a lot. 60 gigs there are some hard drives that don't even have 60 gigs on it, let's be honest. Not everybody can fork out serious amounts of money for a 100 gig hard drive. So if you have 50 gigs, that might be where you cap out. 60, that's a lot for an entire game, when most games these days range between perhaps 20 to 35, maybe 40 gig at a push. 50, you're pushing it. 60, something's wrong. And so the Bungie have spoke about how they want to reduce that. Now, my thoughts are this: they're going to delete a ton of things from the game. This 5-week period would be the 5-week period to drop content that's going to essentially tie up the world of Destiny as we currently know. So let's call this phase 1, similar to what kind of, the Marvel MCU sort of did with Avengers and all the other Marvel heroes. So we'll look at Destiny 2 as technically phase 1, with some abridged to Destiny 1 on the end, on the top of it. And the main thing being is that this phase 1 is about to be phased out. And how is it going to be phased out? It's going to be the Darkness. Now, a lot of people are under the assumption that the Darkness is so big a content that it would be saved for the end of the year, but I sort of beg to differ. My personal opinion is that the Darkness will reach us within this, 5-week period, and we'll get lots of prelude, we'll get lots of pre-Darkness and the effects that that's having on the world of Destiny, so on all the different planets. I think many people have said that the Darkness will destroy Titan. We already know that Titan is the way it is because of the first collapse. So this is going to be the second collapse. So I guess it would make sense that the planet that they were going to delete, they now delete. in the second collapse, which I guess makes sense, but also doesn't kind of make sense at all. Because if I was the darkness, and it's been very apparent that the darkness has a goal to eradicate particular types of life, because the light isn't 100% good, or at least that's the perception that we're getting. We get the perception that the good we are isn't really all good, and so we have this constant question of morality and self-definition of what it means to be good. And it's very well written, it's incredibly written from a writer's point of view. But here's the thing, if the light is actually bad and incites war between different races, then that would almost go to be that perhaps maybe we've misjudged the light, and the light's been using us this whole time for its personal gain, and the darkness is actually the good guy, which is very interesting. And it's a very unique way of the whole sort of yin and yang. If you notice, that's what light and dark is. You know, the light is always supposed to be good and the dark is always supposed to be bad. But when the darkness spoke to us in Shadowkeep, it mentioned many concepts that sort of allude to almost being like a vigilante. So then you begin to ask yourself, are we really good, or is the darkness good? Because apparently it's not our friend and it's not our enemy. It's been made out to be the big bad, but nobody's ever really told us enough about it, because nobody really knows much about the darkness except for the Traveller. So you have to ask yourself, what is the relationship between the Traveller and the darkness, and why is the Traveller a giant globe shaped? It's essentially a planet. I mean, let's not kid around. It's like a smaller moon that can inhabit another planet. I mean, that's the best way. That's how I look at it. It's got its own gravitational pull. If you observe it from the tower, you can see that this Traveller is planet-sized. And then there's the whole thing of, in the first collapse, how it sacrificed itself to get rid of the darkness. And so you've got large fragments of Traveller technology just sort of lying on Earth. It's very strange. There are a lot of loose ends. So these are some of my thoughts. I believe that the darkness will come, and I think that we will go into whatever phase 3 is supposed to be for Destiny 2. And this phase 3 will be a complete 180 where we will completely lose access to the light. The light will be severed, or at least our connection to the light will be severed, and we'll have a connection to the darkness. And it's very interesting, because then it means a lot of what we know in Destiny today will disappear. And Destiny's like, okay, let's reset and do this again. So we're essentially going to do Destiny 2 all over again, but from a different perspective. And so that allows Bungie as a company to implement new styles of gameplay that otherwise weren't story-drivenly possible with our connection to the light. Here's my third thought. My third thought is that this whole thing is going to conclude, and Destiny 2 as a game will end. Towards the end of this year, we will say goodbye to Destiny 2, with hope of a Destiny 3 in the horizon. But there's several questions I have about that. Who is the bad guy in Destiny 3? Who are the races in Destiny 3? Because don't forget, we have a whole galaxy to work with, and there are so many different ways that this could go. If any of you have ever watched Mass Effect Andromeda or played Mass Effect Andromeda, you'll know that the universe is infinite. Hundreds of millions of planets all around galaxies, should I say, because there's more than one. So in a sense, Destiny 2 could probably never die. It could just be this continuously ongoing franchise that begins to explore different universes. And let's not forget that during the old golden age, mankind flew further than they've ever flown before, and they've gone to other galaxies. So it would be safe to assume that there are human beings within the world of Destiny that have nothing to do with the Traveller. And that is an interesting concept in itself. But then the question would be, why would we bother to focus on a story about humans that don't have any abilities? So these are my thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, definitely give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please smash the subscribe button. And I kind of want to do these videos that are sort of like lore / talking about my opinion of what Destiny is, because I feel like there's never much conversation about Destiny 3. That's going to be it for this one. Stay blessed. God bless. Peace.